Hello.
Marlon, mate, you all right?
Yeah, not bad. How are you?
Yeah, not bad, thanks. Yeah.
You can hear me all good, yeah?
Yeah. Good
Yeah,
shit, is yeah.
cool. Nice one. Nice one.
Whereabouts are you, mate?
I'm based well, it's in Rotherham, so just outskirts of Sheffield.
Oh, yeah, all right, okay. I'm from Hull originally, so
Oh, yeah?
not too far away.
No, where are you based now?
Well, just outside Manchester,
Oh, okay.
place called
What made you,
Ermston.
how come you moved there then?
We moved to London first for work and then moved up here with my boy's mum
All right. Fair enough.
about 5 years ago now, which is mad. But yeah.
Some flies.
Yeah. Are you a Rotherham fan?
No, I'm not. I'm originally from Doncaster.
Okay.
But yeah, I moved to Rotherham. But like Sheffield's always like the geographical location that we use, I suppose.
Yeah. It's pretty much it's very close to Sheffield, isn't
Yeah, and like a lot of like Doncaster and Rotherham, it's like a lot of people don't really know it as well, so it's easy to say, "Oh, Sheffield."
it? Yeah, to be fair, I used to say that about Hull. It's just like, oh, it's quite near Leeds.
It's
That was
nowhere
like a
near
reference
Leeds.
point. It's quite an arrow away, yeah.
No, yeah, it is.
All right, nice one, mate. Well, cheers for getting in touch and that. And
Yeah, it's no problem. It's something that I've listened to a few episodes, so I was quite intrigued to be fair. And like I run like a little podcast myself with my best mate, but it's more like on football. So
okay.
um, I'm usually like playing the host, so I thought it'd be quite good to um, well, tell some stories, I suppose.
Yeah. What's the football podcast?
So it's called Switch It Football. My mate runs a Sunday league football team. He
Okay.
and it was just more so just to get a bit of backstory on some of the lads, because conversations like that, you know, roll off the tongue when you're in a pub, but you don't really. It's not like cemented in your brain in a way. So we had just the idea of doing it as a podcast. They have like a little clubhouse that they use after the game. It's just like a back room in a cricket club, to be fair. So we get to use that whenever we want, as long as they've not got a function on. So use it for like weddings and that as well. Um, but some of the lads like from I went to school with, like one of them at Sheffield United with like Harry Maguire and who else? I mean, he played against like Rashford and Pogba in FA Youth Cup final,
All right.
and he's coming on in the next couple of weeks. So it'll be good to get some stories out of him because he's quite quiet about his football life. I think he just like knuckles down on
Hmm.
that side of it. But some of the lads we've known since we were kids, so we know the stories. It's just more for like all the other lads in the club. We just do it as it's just a laugh.
Yeah.
We usually had a few beers as well, even though it's tends to be recorded at like 10 a.m. So there's no holds barred on it really. But yeah, it's I've enjoyed it, which is the main thing, and that's what sort of like prompted me to come forward on this.
No, yeah, that's interesting. Yeah. Do you follow Steve Bracknell on social media?
Oh, like with John McClure and stuff in it.
Yeah, he doesn't he like he has a character that's a Sunday league football manager. It's quite funny.
Yeah, because I know John from Revenant Makers has appeared in like a few bits of his as well.
Yeah. Because he's actually the
Yeah,
guy on the front of the Arctic Monkeys' first album as well.
yeah, the bald head guy. Yeah, well, he's
Yeah.
bald head now. Yeah, yeah. It's funny as well because, like I say, because it's like localish, and it's just he reminds me of my old football manager
Oh, really?
as well. Yeah, just like on at you all the time, but he knows when to just have a laugh. But yeah, it is quite funny. I've watched quite a few, not all of them, but there's that many football podcasts now, like Under the Caution, and obviously like Gary Neville does one now, and Lineker does one. That side of it seems to be taken off, which is quite nice to see.
Yeah. So then your other Instagram, then you taped magazine.
Yeah.
How did that start?
Well, I mean, taking it back in terms of like music, so I started doing shows in Sheffield when I were about, I think I was 15 or 16.
Doing
Um,
shows, what do you mean, sorry?
like promoting, actually, like
Oh,
booking
right, okay.
shows. Yeah, so I was doing that.
How old are you out of interest, by the way?
I'm 27 at the minute.
Ah, okay, fair bit
Yeah.
younger than me.
So yeah, promoting shows from like 15, 16 years old, and when the scene sort of died off, um, I was just like not doing anything like industry wise, and someone suggested, well, the contacts that I've acquired over the past like 6, 7 years that I was doing it, they were like, it's a bit wasted, and I just thought I always played it down like what I did. And someone just suggested the idea, oh, why don't you go to like loads of gigs? Why don't you like review them? I was like, I'll give it a go. And I give it a go, and then I think I just jumped right in at the deep end in a way because the last year I did 94 shows in 2023. So
Yeah, yeah.
um, I was a bit like head over heels on towards the end of the year, and I was just like, God, this can go somewhere in a way. And this year itself's already nearly exceeded that, and we're only halfway through the year, so it's. But at the same time, it's like as much as I'm doing it as like a magazine online basis, I just love going to gigs, and you know, people always like said to me like, oh, like lads from back home who like play football and stuff, they're not like massively into music. And
Mm.
they're always like, oh, what was the gig like, sort of thing. And rather than like telling the stories and stuff, I can just be like, just read this, just read it. It's so much easier. But yeah, that sort of stemmed from it because, like I say, I'm booking shows. So,
Yeah, yeah. So how long you been doing it then?
so
The
this I've
reviewing
been
wise.
doing the reviewing. Yeah, I've been doing my first review in March last year, so I've only been
Okay.
doing it just over a year. Um, it originally started out as like, so I'd like the socials for a year before it, and it was just originally going to be like when tours and new music and stuff got announced, I was just sharing it all the time, just keeping people up to date with it.
Mm.
Because stuff like Kerrang and NME fell out of the print side of it. I think it was more like during the COVID times. They stopped printing magazines and it went all online, and it was like a bit of a market for it. But those type of publications don't cater to all genres within rock. Like Kerrang's like mainly metal, pop punk. Rock sounds like pop punk and hardcore, and then you got NME, which is like your indie, and they've sort of gone into pop now. My idea was like just bring it all together plus more. So like, like modern punk and ska and stuff is still quite popular. It's just a lot of the bands now are they're pushing the 70s,
Mm.
because there's not really any new music coming through on that front. But that scene's still quite popular. So my idea originally was to just basically have a format where everybody that likes or like rock music as a collective can see everything they need to know, rather than buying like 5 different types of magazines. Because that's what I did when I was a kid. Because I love that much different types of rock music. I would buy Q, Mojo, like Kerrang, NME, Rock Sound, Metal Hammer. I'd buy them every single week or month, and that's like nearly 15 quid altogether. And
Mm.
some of them are weekly, so that's even more. So you're looking at 25 quid just to keep up to date with music, whereas like my format was just free.
Yeah, yeah. That's interesting. And yeah, it's got quite a diverse selection of songs to play. So we'll
Yeah,
we'll crack into them then. Like the first one, Embrace Ashes.
yeah.
Um, Quite a well-known song, really. I guess not really doesn't feel part of the noughties indie scene as such, but why this song?
Well, this song was sort of like the first part. Well, my music journey was actually quite funny. When I was like 3 or 4 years old, my mum always used to play Steps or S Club 7 in the car, and she'd always used to make us do like all the dance moves and stuff like that. And it was just as a kid, it's just a laugh, really.
Yeah.
Um, but when Ashes come out, it would have been about 2004 or five, and I got my first FIFA 06 on PS2, and you're on the soundtrack. And I just remember listening to it. And then obviously when you're playing FIFA regular as a kid, sometimes you hear the song 3 or 4 times a day. and it was just like regular. And it just ingrained in my mind. There were other songs on there. They're like Lila by Oasis, Helicopter by Black Party. There were a Hard Fire song on there as well. Doves, and that song was just like a topic of conversation where I went to my dad and I said, because my dad were massive into music. He's a huge Paul Weller fan. So I went to him and says, "Oh, do you know this band called Embrace?" And this like biggest smile on his face. He was like, "Yeah." I mean, I was like 8, 9 years old. And he says, "Yeah." I says, "Well, my dad was stage manager at Doncaster Dome in the 90s.
All
So my
right.
dad's actually worked on an Embrace show before."
But it's
Um,
seen some really good bands there.
yeah, well, there was like the Prodigy, Ocean Colour Scene, Manic Street Preachers, Seahorses.
I saw
Uh,
Kings of Leon there.
yeah, a few people have mentioned the Kings of Leon gig like recently. Was it like the really hot one?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
His second album, I think.
yeah.
Yeah.
So like mid 2000s. Yeah,
Well, I've
yeah. A
been
lot of
twice
people
maybe
do
to see
mention
him there,
that.
actually. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a popular theme, that Kings of Leon gig. Funnily, I was talking to one about it not long ago, and they said it was like the hottest gig they've ever been to. Because it must, I'm guessing it must have been in the summer. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, so yeah, that Embrace song, like I say, it stuck with me because my dad actually worked with them or worked for them as such on the gig. To the point where, if you remember the Dome, it's like sports hall.
Mm.
If you like look at the floor, it's got all like the basketball court markings and stuff. So while they were setting up the stage, they actually pulled out some five-a-side nets. So some of the staff and the band and like my dad and stuff like that, they were playing like five-a-side while skivvies were setting up the stage.
Yes.
So and then because of that, I said to my dad, "So I really like this song." My dad was like, "Right, we'll get your album," and that then sparked me into getting my first iPod, and then it sort of took off from there, really.
Like it. Yes. Well, here's the song anyway. Here's Embrace with Ashes. And then I saw you'd actually done some interviews as well. You've interviewed James, which is a pretty big deal, isn't it? How did that come about?
Yeah, Soul from James. I mean, luckily, what we do and with the reviews and stuff, we send them or we contact them through PR teams or like the press contacts. And sometimes you'll contact them about like a specific band, but then they'll add you to your mailing list, and then all of a sudden you're getting stuff with like different bands or different artists. So with James, they brought out a new album, they did an arena tour, and because of they were doing that, they wanted the press. So they said, "Oh, if you're ever interested in any interviews, get in touch. We'll try accommodate." So that's what I did. I said to him, like, "I'd be interested in interviewing one of them, whoever it is." So it ended up being Sal, who's one of the original members of the band. It took, to be fair, to get it nailed down because of the timing. You know, I have a full-time job at the end of the day, so it's hard for me to do it in the daytime. But luckily, like one day I had a day off work and managed to come round to doing it. And it it was when you're in that interview. I mean, you'll probably feel the same with the people that you've interviewed. Once you start get going, you don't realize they're a celebrity or like a band member and stuff. You know, if you've got your conversation flowing, it's just like chatting to someone over a pint. And we were then lucky enough to go and see them at Leeds Arena, literally like a few days later from that interview. And he was a lovely bloke. He's a bit crackers, but um, I mean, he's fully like vegan now, teetotal. You know, he proper looks after himself, and it was quite an eye opener as well because with them being in a band since the late '80s, early '90s, where they sort of got really popular, they've seen it all, and they've seen how much like substances and not looking after yourself on the road really does to you. And this tour, I don't know if you've read like the full interview, but this tour they did was like the first tour where they had like no booze, full stop on the tour bus,
Ah,
in the
okay.
dressing rooms, nothing. But Sal actually drives to gigs himself, so he doesn't go on the tour bus. He
All
actually
right.
jumps in his car and follows the route in. But he likes to go for a run. He does something like 5 miles a day, just running in the countryside, and then he just meets up with them. So he does it like a little bit different to the rest of the band, but like I say, collectively they were like, "This is going to be the first tour we're going to have no booze." Like I say, it was quite a big eye opener, really. A lot of people don't realize how much strain touring does put on you as an individual, and then if other things happen to, like, if, imagine if your singer's blown his voice out because he's having loads of booze, it's like, well, then it detriments everybody else. So they
Yeah,
must
yeah.
have had that conversation where they were like, right, let's go for it on this one, and it's paid off. The show is unreal, and they all seem just like really like genuine people. So, and that's the vibe I got off Sal, as much as he were a bit of a character.
Yes. Let's move on to your second song then. Hardfire, who I think have been touring again recently. Um,
Yeah, they
Living
did a
for the
tour last
Weekend.
year.
Yeah, why this
Yeah,
particular song?
so this is another song because around about that same era, I say with the Embrace one, it was that sort of time, because of the bands like with Embrace, and like I say there were a Hardfire tune on that FIFA as well from the same album. So I just really not like these bands that are on this soundtrack, and Hardfire being one. And then there were more predominant songs that compared to that one on the FIFA. I can't for the life of me think what it were. But then you got like Cash Machine, Hard to Beat, Living for the Weekend. But Living for the Weekend on like Sunday, like like on Sky Sports at the time, and that were another thing on a weekend, like spending my weekends with my dad. We used to go to the pub on a Sunday, have Sunday dinner, and then it used to be like Super Sunday on projector and pub, and that
Yeah.
song was just always on it. I think they use I think it's like either Jess Glynn or Florence Machine now, just for like the credits and stuff. And that song just stuck with me for years. And they split up like in the mid 2010s, so I never really, when I started going to gigs, I never got to see them. But then they've just come back. They did a tour last year, and I got to see them. So that was quite a nice little full circle moment.
Yeah, yeah. What did again? Do you give like stars in your reviews? Like, do you rate
No,
them
I
on as
don't.
such?
No, I just literally go off, literally just off the words. The other thing it's hard to sort of base it on, because if you do it a 5 out of 5, it's got to be absolutely perfect, and not every gig is perfect. Um, there's always something that goes wrong, and it's not always the band, or it's not always the sound, or the venue, anything. It could just be something that happens in the crowd that can put a bit of a downer on a personal level. Someone who's a bit too pissed up or causing a bit of havoc. So I
Yeah.
think the star thing is just, if you want to like base it off just the music or just the performance, that's fine. But if you like look at the reviews that I do, I try taking everything that's around you. So I think I don't use that on that basis, because I judge the whole gig as a collective. Um, Plus, everyone does it as well. I'd like to sort of think I'd like to be a bit more different as well, and it's just not something that I've ever even thought about doing, to be honest.
Yeah. Fair play. Well, here a hard fire with Living for the Weekend. Um, so I mean, 93 gigs. That's a fair bit of money. Do you get do you get free tickets at any point?
Yeah, so the ones that I review is purely based on, so it's like an exchange. So I do a review for it's a re-ticket basically.
That's all right, isn't it?
So with last year, um, yeah, I did 90 shows, and like when tours get announced, they overlap into the following year. So a lot of those gigs were purchased before I
Right.
started this up. So I think it was about 40 in the end that I did. Plus, within that year as well, the stuff that I really, really wanted to cover, and I just didn't get the opportunity to get that guest list or like press pass or anything like that. So, I've bought tickets out of my own pocket. Um,
Is
but
that quite
majority of
easy to
them,
do then? Can you just email and say, can I get a guest list spot if I do a review? Or how does it work?
sorry. Yeah, I mean, if you've got a publication, it's always like the starting point. You know, if you've got something to sort of basically like, oh, this is what I do,
Yeah.
then that's the bottom line, to be honest. But um, it's it's hard because not everyone replies. Um, you know, whether they look at it and they think, oh, not interested, sort of thing. So you've got to sort of, well, the way I've done it, because I have such a broad music interest in like smaller bands and your biggest stuff as well. I started off small to start with, just like bands that are not signed or you know, they're struggling to sell out like 100 cap rooms. I think I did 4 or 5 of that sort of vibe before I went into like an academy size room.
Hmm.
And it's building up that sort of relationship with press contacts as well, because with that, that's like sort of how the James one interview came about. Because the guy who looks after James, he looks after like DMAs, Japanese House, Pale Waves, Alt J. There's loads of bands that last year had quite a big year. So because I use it as use the magazine as well as like a news outlet, just promoting the tours and promoting the new music that they release. If they release an album, like this is when the album comes out, pre-order links to the new single they bring out. It's just overall, it's just general support. So if you, the way I did it was, um, not particularly with that person, but I'll get a press release sent through. I'll knock up an article based off that, send them the link to the article, and then if there's a tour in it, I should like I'd be really interested in reviewing on this tour. So I've basically given them a body of work that they should be, well, hopefully happy with to support my application. And then when it comes to the review, I then obviously send that to them as well. So um, it depends. Like with people, some of them have been like really really good. Like I say, it's all about building that relationship, and there's some of them that I've just never happened to be able to work with, because it depends on the size of the artist as well. If you're just going for the big hitters all the time, it's going to be hard, because those types of bands will want the main publications, like the newspapers and like your NME and your Kerrang and stuff, and they'll always get priority, you know, compared to like publications that I do and other people do that are on a smaller scale. So and sometimes it's lucky as well. You know, you got to take luck into it as well. Um, like last year, I did get lucky with a few shows, to be honest. So it can be easy, it can be difficult, but the main thing is about building that relationship, and then hopefully they'll be more lenient with your requests.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, let's go into your next song then. The Cribs, We Share the Same Skies.
Yeah,
Um, yeah, I guess this is a bit of a later song, really. It's a great song though. Why this
yeah,
particular one?
yeah. So I mean, this one we're a bit later, 2009, I think this come out. Well, Johnny Marr did this album with the Cribs. Um, the song itself, I listened to not when it come out. I actually come around to listen to it when I went to my first Leeds festival, which was 2012.
All right.
My best mate who I do the football podcast with, he's a bit older than me. He was a massive indie fan at school. Um, he went to see like Oasis, Stereophonics, Kasabian, bands like that while he was a teenager. But at the same time, there were bands like Cortinas and Cribs you know, like that sort of level were coming through and becoming quite popular. And the Leeds festival we went to in 2012, the Cribs, I don't know if they headlined or they were one under the headline on the Radio One tent. And he just said, "Oh, we'll go watch the Cribs because they're really, really good." And so we went with him, and they played that song because the album that come after it was just about to come out. So that the Ignore the Ignorant album was still quite fresh for fans, and that song just stuck out to me. You know, even going back home and listening to the full album before the next one come out, and It's still my favorite Cribs album. Like Men's Needs is a really good one, and I've seen them play that in full as well. But he just holds that sort of memory where my best mate recommended me something, and I've sort of kept on to that. And to this day, we've been to see the Cribs together. I think it was 2021. They re-released like the first three albums. Just went to watch them at the Brudenell in Leeds,
Oh yeah.
and they did Men's Needs in full. And then I've seen them since, like at festivals and a couple of other shows they've supported on. So, but that song is one of the only ones they'll play off that album, and it's just one that I always look forward to seeing. Um, they played a festival last year called Hardwick Festival up near Durham, and it was the Cribs, Johnny Marr, and Noel Gallagher, and I was itching for Johnny Marr to come out during that Cribs song, and Cribs played it, but Johnny Marr didn't come out,
Really?
unfortunately.
Even though he was there?
Yeah, I know. I'm a bit gutted, to be honest. They dedicated it to Johnny as well, like on at the actual. But yeah, he didn't come out, unfortunately, because he only plays guitar. It's not like he comes out and sings on it. If he just sang on the song, I think he would have come out. But it's guitar, it's a bit more of a faff in it, like
I
setting it up
suppose,
and
yeah.
everything.
All right, well, here it is anyway. Here's the Cribs with We Share the Same Skies. Then the next band, The Twang. Are they a Yorkshire band?
No, they're from Birmingham.
Ah, they are, okay, right. I
Yeah.
weirdly saw, yeah, I was reading a post, yeah, they posted yesterday, I think, about Glastonbury. But
Oh
yeah,
yeah, they played it like years ago, didn't they?
yeah, something about the fact they've never been back or something, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I think when like the height of their career, I think they got it, and then they've just never been invited back.
He said something about they probably annoyed a lot of people when they were there or something. But they're
Yeah.
like, are they similar ilk? I guess you get those bands like Kasabian that kind of almost follow in the path of Oasis. It's kind of type of like the lad band, but is that where they fit, do you think?
Yeah, I'd say so. They're not strictly like your typical like indie band, like you put Pigeon Detectives and Cortinas and Cribs, and they're not in that sort of category. They are a bit more. I don't know. They don't dress like any of the other ones. Not wearing skinny jeans and cardigans and stuff that we used to wear as kids. They're a bit just what they want, and they're still like that now. They just got that crowd. Um, And that debut album is unreal. It's so good. And funnily enough, if you got I think either the deluxe one or like one of the iTunes bonus tracks and stuff. I think like two or three tracks on there were actually recorded at Doncaster Dome.
All right.
Um, so just to have that on there as like a local lad from Donny, that's quite, I wouldn't say special, but it's unusual to see like that Doncaster name like floating about just on like a live song. You wouldn't really have that. You'd record it at somewhere like Rock City or like even their own venue like O2 Academy at Birmingham. They actually did it at the Dome.
Hmm.
But like like when obviously when you went to Kings Lea, and the Dome is huge. It's like it's bigger than Rock City. It's bigger than like pretty much every O2 Academy. It's like three and a half
Yeah.
thousand capacity. Um,
Yeah, I mean, like, I
so they
remember
could,
the Strokes played there on their third
yeah,
album tour and stuff, yeah.
yeah, so I think that's probably what one of the reasons was because it was like essentially like the biggest show they played at that time. Um, but the sound was never that brilliant, to be honest, because it's like in a big tin building. But obviously, if it's recorded through your monitors and stuff, it's not too bad. But as a punter,
Hmm.
it's not been the best one.
Ah, fair enough. I'm all right in there thinking, I can imagine them having quite a loyal fan base. Like, like the Cortinas have quite a loyal fan base. Are they quite similar?
What the twang?
Yeah.
Yeah, really, really loyal fan base. I mean, the as soon as a tour gets announced, there's dates all over getting sold out. I mean, they played the Lead Mill last year. They toured, I think, like November into the December, and the Lead Mill was like the first one to go. I think he went on the day, which is about 900 tickets. Um, they do local ones at Christmas. Um, like Birmingham, they tend to do 1 or 2 dates. They call it Twangmas. They've done it for years. They want to at least one goes immediately. Whether they announce the second one as an additional date or if they're just doing two together, it's always like if it's a Friday or a Saturday, it's gone immediately. Um, but yeah, they don't tour all the time. It might be like 18 months, 2 years before they tour again, whether it's a support or a headline. But as soon as that announcement comes through, it's guaranteed sell out, anywhere they go.
Better play. Well, here they are then. Here's the twang with Either Way. And the next band, Editors, kind of like a mainstay of the early period. I don't know if they've done much since. Have they carried on releasing music?
Um, Not particularly like new music. No, they just started touring again this year. They did like a couple of big dates. I think they did O2 Academy at Leeds. They might have done the Roundhouse in London. They did the Lead Mill. They actually did Glastonbury last year,
All
which are
right.
a bit like I just completely forgot about them for years. Like because of that, we like not necessarily new music, and it's not heavily like in the public eye now. But that song Munich, same concept with like Ashes. It run FIFA Street too, and when I started playing that Editor's tune just stuck with me for that era. Um, and there's I say that's the blessing of video games. I think in my time, as much as people always say you sat in front of the screen, that's what I got from my parents. Sat in front of the screen all the time, you get square eyes. Hence why I got glasses. Um, I my music taste developed off the back of that, and it's quite good as well because when you got bands like not necessarily Editors because they are their own sort of thing. They're quite gothic in their own way, but they're pigeonholed to like indie stuff as well. Um, because like with my dad being a Weller fan, it was like, oh, I like Arctic Monkeys. He's like, well, listen to who Arctic Monkeys are influenced by. It's like Oasis, and it's like listen to who Oasis are influenced by. It's like the Jam. Then it goes back to the Beatles, and you
Hmm.
see that era. Whereas like my dad obviously went through that era of it being the other way. He's gone from the Beatles to the Jam to Oasis to Monkeys. I've had to go backwards because it's obviously all before my time. And you don't, I think as a 10-year-old, you don't appreciate the evolution of the music because your mind's not that open to it all. When obviously when I got to about 16, 17, I mean, I love the Jam. I mean, I have to love the Jam. It was ingrained into my brain as such a young kid. But yeah, like music, like soundtracks and things like that off, whether it's a video game or what. It's helped a lot. And like I say, because Editors is slightly different to that. It was like one of the first bands that was outside of the like indie sort of time. So it did help me go on to like other stuff in the future.
Yeah. Okay, well here they are. Here's Editors with Munich. Um, so like say all those gigs last year, can you give like a top three of the best gigs of last year?
Um, I mean, if you're just going based off performances, I'd probably say Liam Gallagher at the Coco in Camden. I think
Oh
it's
yeah.
about
Was that a bit of an
1,000.
exclusive gig or something?
Yeah, so he did the Nebworth CD and vinyl. He brought it out as a physical, and it was just like a launch date for that. So people who pre-ordered it got access to the pre-sale code, and then it was just like, if you got the ticket, you got the ticket. If you didn't, you didn't. And I bought tickets for that. I just couldn't. I mean, I knew who to contact for it, and I just couldn't pass up on the opportunity of not going. So I'd rather have just bought a ticket. I mean, Liam Gallagher's Liam Gallagher. At the end of the day, you know what you're going to get. But to see him in a room with only like 1,200 people, whereas the year before I seen him at Nebworth and I seen him at City Ground, I've seen him at arenas, Finsbury Park. So to see him in that setting, I mean, it was absolutely chaos. It was so hot. It was middle of August. It was so hot. Um, it's the loudest I've ever heard a crowd sing. Um, but at the same time, when you're in that moment, I don't think you realize how special that is because, like I say, he's playing like these massive outdoor spaces and arenas. And the fact he's in a room that is smaller than Rock City and academies. But I mean, he has a big band as well. I mean, he's got backing singers now, and he's got like 3 or 4 guitarists, and sometimes he has a drummer and a percussionist. You know, to fit it all on that stage, we're pretty crazy in its own right. So yeah, that was quite special because I love Oasis. I'll always love them. Probably like another one in top three, I'd say Muse at Manchester Arena.
Oh yeah.
That was the biggest gig I've had the privilege of reviewing. We
You
got
went there like on the guest list type vibe.
Yeah, so I didn't find out till like that's another thing with guest lists. I mean, I get the reason why it can take it down to the wire finding out when your approval's been put through, and I found that out the day before, and which I don't mind. It's only the day before, but we also went up to Manchester and watched them, and you don't know where you're going to be either. You don't know if you're going to be standing, like because it's an arena. You're going to be standing. You could be seating. You could be right up in the rafters. You could be down on the floor. Um, so we got there, went to the box office, picked my tickets up, looked on them, and there were seats. I was like, I mean, I'm pushing 30 now, and everything's starting to hurt. So a seat can be quite nice.
Yeah, definitely.
So we got there, and we must have been about 10 rows up from the floor, right behind the sound desk. It's like bang straight in the middle. You had like a catwalk stage, so you was like pretty much just seeing everything like in front of you. And the production was crazy. Like the stage were moving, you know, there were fireworks, other like pyrotechnics. But for 3 of them to sound that like powerful, I mean, there's no wonder they've headlined like Glastonbury and Reading and Leeds and stuff. Um, but yeah, that were a crazy experience. Just not even taking in the guest list isn't into consideration. Just the gig as a whole because the production was so good. And probably the other one, I'd probably say While She Sleeps at Alexandra Palace in London. That were another one I got guest list for. But I mean, I've known Loz, who's the singer, for about 10 years now. He's from Doncaster, and the band are from Sheffield. And it was their
Okay.
biggest ever. There was their biggest ever gig. Sold out Ali Palace. It's like 10,000 capacity. He were on my birthday as well. It just fell into place, and he was just like for an independent band. You know, they're not on a label. They run a Patreon service to sort of get funding for like albums and touring and merch and stuff like that. And there were people from all over the world that were there because it were a one-off gig. It weren't like it was part of the tour and it was the last day. It was literally just a Saturday night one-off gig in London. So there were people from like Costa Rica and Australia and Germany and Argentina that had flown in for this one gig, and they've built such a big community because of that Patreon service. They've got Facebook groups where people from all different corners of the world are interacting with each other, and if it's like they're selling a T-shirt or a vinyl and stuff like that, there's people in these other parts of the world that don't have a record shop, or they don't get them to tour and stuff like that. They're all doing it for everybody else, for each other, sorry. And props to them for doing it because a metal band, an unsigned metal band, to do that, to sell at Ali Pali is pretty crazy.
Well, the
And
unsigned.
yeah, they're unsigned.
Wow, that's mad.
They were on I think they're on Sony for the first 2 albums, maybe the third. And then they were just like, I mean, you know how it is with record labels. You have to basically you're borrowing money off them. You got to pay it back through your sales, and then if your sales don't do well, then it's coming out of your pocket. And they were just like, we don't want to do that
Hmm.
anymore. So yeah, they went fully unsigned, and then like I said, they run a Patreon service.
So is that
So
like
like,
that you can only listen to the songs if you buy a physical copy or on Patreon? So they
so
skip
the
out
pay
Spotify and stuff.
no, they still do Spotify
All right,
and
okay.
things like that. The Patreon service is so I think it's like six. I think the bottom they've got a few tiers. I think the cheapest one's like £6 a month, and you get early listens to songs. You get fan pre-sale prior to like the O2 priority ticket sales. They give you like
Hmm.
a day before. Um, Exclusive merch, exclusive vinyl variants. So they brought an album out earlier this year. So there were one variant which is exclusive only to the like they call it the Sleep Society. Um, they do members only shows. So only people who are a Patreon customer can get tickets for the shows. But they're always like the smaller scales. I mean, you think the you know selling out Ali Pally and they supported Parkway Drive on their arena tour. They're playing like Manchester Arena, and then they're playing like a 200 cap no barrier show in Manchester
Yeah,
to like obviously like 200 lucky people. So they're giving it all back, and they do like behind the scenes as well. So they're filming all the progress of the album, like the writing, and they're getting these society members to come in to do gang vocals. So they get like 20 of these people in, and then they can be part of the album. Um, so it's they're doing it as like content creation as well as they're as much as they're taking the money off you, they're actually giving you something more than just here's an album that we've created off your money. Like now you can see every single day how this album is created, but only on the Patreon. They're not putting it on Facebook and Twitter and stuff because the socials is mainly for the announcements and like photos of the tour that they're on at the moment. This behind the scenes stuff is really only what your producers and your mixers and maybe close friends and family would see. But now, because they've got that Patreon service, they're giving it to everybody who pays for it, basically. So
yeah,
it's good. I think it's really really good what they're doing, and it's quite sustainable for them to do it because they managed to do two full lengths off it, and they're going to be bringing out something before Christmas as well. So it's good to see. And like I say, I've known Loz for 10 years. I mean, I've played five-a-side football with him. Like I seen him like 2 days after he got back from a tour in Poland, and it's just like, oh, I was tour. He's like, yeah, yeah, like it was sick as always. And it's like, but if a fan asked him that, it'd be a bit different. So
hmm.
it's just nice to see like one of your pals do really well, and that was quite proud, like a proud moment for me personally.
Yeah, yeah, cool. All right, let's get to your second half of your songs then. You picked
Mm,
Arctic Monkeys. That's where you're
yeah.
on. Uh, yeah, big fan of this song as well. But why this particular one for you?
I mean, it's very rare that an outro song is arguably the best on the album. You always have like it's always like one of the singles or something that's like in the middle.
Did you Suck It and See?
Yes, the fourth
Yeah.
one. Yeah. I mean, the album is such a big part of my teenage years. So it came out in 2011. So I'd have been 15 when it come out. And I mean, in that time, it was, partying and, like your weekends were spent drinking on a park or around at someone's house. And when the Arctic Monkeys album come out and it just brought me and my mates together, we loved it. And a lot of them have sort of fizzled out on music now. I don't really speak to them, but that album was just such a pinnacle in that time because it's so different as well to the other three. Like, the debut was just like your typical like indie sound, even like the Sheffield sound because they're like Milburn and Little Man Tate and stuff, very similar sound. And then like Favorite Worst Nightmare and Humbug went like heavier, and there were songs that were slower, songs that were like a lot more fast. I mean, like Brainstorm so much quicker. Then you got 505, which starts quite slow, and it's like quite heavy, powerful chorus. That's where You're Wrong's quite mellow all the way through, and that's why it fits really good as an outro, because it's such a different sound to the previous three records as a whole. It was like, this is where they're going to start not giving a shit anymore, and they just want to do what they want. And obviously they've done that with the next two, three releases now. And let's say evolution in music can be detrimental to some artists, and some artists it can get them new heights. And I think that was the turning point where they were like, okay, we're like the biggest band in the UK at the minute, and now we're going to be like the biggest band in the world. And I think AM sort of secured that the following album, but just because when this album come out, it was just like, it's just ingrained in my teenage years. And I mean, it was actually the first vinyl I bought as well. Or
All
actually,
right.
I got it for Christmas. I only sort of got into vinyl collecting like a few years ago, and so I got my first record player, and then I got Arctic Monkey Sucking Sea as my first vinyl. And I mean, I don't play it all the time, I don't overdo it, but that's that song where I'm just like, I could just sit back and listen to it 10 times on the bounce. I'll never ever get bored of it. So yeah, it's just because it was such a big thing in my teenage years.
Yeah, cool. Okay, well here it is. Here's Arctic Monkeys with That's Where You're Wrong. The next one, I've not heard of this band, Cusp. What can you tell us about them?
Yeah, I seen them support the DMAs last year. DMAs actually did like a bit of a weird, I won't say weird, sorry. They went a bit out of the box with one of their tours. So they had like a couple of festival days. They had like Tramlines, Truck, and Why Not Festival, I think. So what they did was they wanted to play like a couple of different places compared to the usual touring circuit. So rather than your Manchesters and your Londons and your Birminghams and your Glasgows, they went and did Boston near Lincoln. They did Grimsby and Bexhill-on-Sea. And Grimsby being the closest out of the ones for me. I just went, and Cusp actually was supporting them. I think they did all 3 dates, to be honest. So I interviewed them not long after the tour, and they're like, I don't know. It's hard to put them in like a genre because they've got indie elements and they've got like a bit of a poppy side to them in a way. But I mean, they're only a three piece. Really lovely lads. And one thing that they actually did, which I thought were really cool, I've actually got it here somewhere. Have to bear with me. They brought a new song out, which is the song I've obviously given you. And rather than doing the traditional, or here's a song on Spotify, they did like an early listen to it. So this is what they sent out to people, just a postcard.
Right.
You had to sign up to their mailing list. And if you sign up to their mailing list, you got a postcard sent out with a QR code.
Okay.
And it gave fans like a week early to listen to it, which is, if you think about it, years ago, bands would send promotional CDs to radio stations and other people like within the industry. So they've done that, but done it a bit more modern.
Right.
And I loved it. And because it's a postcard, you all got like a personal message on there as well. And yeah, I love the song. I mean, Noel Gallagher's heard the song beforehand. Someone sent it him or showed it him on a podcast or an interview we did. And he says, how old's this? He says, oh, it only come out like 3 months ago. It's like, this sounds expensive. Like, it sounds expensive to be made. Like, 'cause it's so well produced.
Right.
But yeah, they're like,
I think that's when
I
is
think,
that on Matt Morgan's podcast when he was listening to a lot of
yeah,
new music?
yeah, it'll be the Matt Morgan one. Yeah,
Yeah. My mate's
yeah.
band, he listened to on that as well.
Oh, really? Who's that?
Called Church Party from Manchester.
Okay, no, I'll make a note of them now.
Yeah,
Church
like,
Party.
they were buzzing because Noel Gallagher said He said something like he was having it or something.
Yeah. So yeah, obviously Noel heard the song before this one, but because they did that sort of campaign for this, it's I mean it helps. It's a brilliant song anyway, but I like the sort of the little campaign they did behind it. I thought it's quite it's nice to see that come back into action. It's just like on a more modern scale.
Yeah, cool. Okay, well here it is. Here's Cusp with try again. Here's Cusp with Coming Up Roses. So in terms of new music, then I'm always interested to hear what people's sources for new music these days.
Um, it's hard. I mean, it's a lot different to what when I were a kid. I mean, like when I sort of were younger, it was I literally would go and buy a Kerrang magazine every week, and I just look at the listings, like the gig listings, and being 14 with barely any money, it was like Sheffield was like the only thing to sort of go off for like live performances. So I'd just look what gigs were on in Sheffield, and then I'd just research who they were, and if I liked it, I liked it. If I didn't, I didn't. But with like that as well, you got tour posters as well to go off, and you know, tour posters in itself is an art. You're drawn to particular ones as well, and even if you've never heard the band before, like being drawn to like a particular poster should warrant your attention. To actually then go in and research on it. I mean, Spotify, you've got that fans also like section or like artists similar. People can still use that because you do drop on like the odd curveball, and I'm quite still guilty of that now. But using like, not promoting myself too much, but like websites but our website and socials and stuff, you'll always find someone you've never heard of before. And even if it's not like your particular genre, like if you're just an indie fan and you find a band that's like maybe a bit heavier or a bit more poppier, you're gonna get lost in that world all of a sudden. You don't realize you're gonna go down that rabbit hole. And I think that's a good way of doing it. If people are like want to look for new music, it's good. And I think that's one thing that social media is quite good for. It's so easily available to find new music. Like you see who bands are touring with, you look at festival lineups. If you're going to a festival, and that's why time slots are quite good as well in advance. Like you work out who you're going to go see at 5 o'clock and who you're going to see at 6, and who you're going to see at 7. But if you've not got anyone to watch at 8 o'clock, what I always did was, I'll listen to who these are on at 8 o'clock. And if I like them, it's like, I found a new band.
Mm.
And that's another good way of doing it, like you say, with the festivals and checking out support bands. I mean, if a tour's got like 1, 2, maybe 5 support bands, I might not have heard of half of them, but I'd always be willing to check them out, and they could be your next favorite band, but they
Yeah.
could also be the next big thing as well. Bands like Yard Acts and Fontaine's DC and Idols, Soft Play, they were all on that sort of level where they were supporting bands, and then they've ended up becoming like these huge names in that sort of scene. And you can sit there and say, well, I'm part of that growth that they've gone into. So it's just about utilizing social media in the best way, rather than the negative side it always gets labelled with.
Yeah. Do you bother with any radio or not really?
I listen to radio at work. It's mainly like Radio X, to be honest.
Mm.
Because again, you do get the odd. You mean you have a record of the week, but sometimes it's like a song that's been out 3 weeks, and it's just like it's not a new song anymore. Like because with bands as well. I mean, if a band's bringing out a 12-track album, they're bringing out 5, 6 singles, and that album might be from when it gets announced and the album coming out might only be 4 months. So by the time that single is getting a bit stale, like say 3 weeks, they brought a new one out. So like the radio is not. Sometimes it's just background noise. And like Radio X, they do have like Best of British, and it's always like the same sort of stuff. We try to change it up as well at work. We try Greatest Hits. They do like the Pop Master quiz on at 10:30, and that's quite funny. But again, they always play like a lot of like 80s and 90s stuff, which is more like the pop side of it, which I'm not really like accustomed to in that era. It's just repetitive. I think that's the problem with radio. It's quite repetitive. I mean, if I'm gonna have a radio station on, I only have it on at home. I have Access Manchester on.
Yeah, I listened to that one in the car.
Yeah, I mean, obviously because we're outside of Manchester, DABs doesn't reach it all the time. So, but we have a Google speaker downstairs, and I always bang it on there on a weekend, like from at home. It's first thing on a weekend. That's on, making me. I'll have a coffee, breakfast, and it's just like there's always a good tune on there. But it's just I find it too repetitive. It's too many of the same songs all the time.
Yeah, I find it's just slightly better than Radio X, maybe, in terms of
Yeah,
like the variation.
yeah, because I mean,
But
there's
it's
artists
similar.
like yeah, it's very similar. Like in the sort of like the mainstream stuff they put on, like your Foo Fighters and then like your Oasis Hard Fight. I mean, that Beatles song that come out not long ago, I mean, that got some absolute hammer on Excess and Radio X. They're playing it constantly. But then on Excess, you've got like the K's and Tom A. Smith and Royston Club who are getting airtime in the daytime at like 4 o'clock, whereas Radio X, like John Kennedy's not banging that until 11 o'clock at night when we're all asleep pretty much.
Yeah.
Like John Kennedy's quite good with like new music. I mean, he's played some of my mates' bands, who were like unsigned, and they struggle to sell out their local gigs and stuff like that. So John's really good in new music, but the problem is, like I say, you don't get it in the daytime. I think that's what Excess have got over Radio X is the fact is they're more than willing to put new music out there for people,
Yeah.
and that helps as well for people that are looking for new music. I think it's a really important, and like I say, because it's a Manchester station, doesn't mean listen to it because I listen to it on a Google speaker. If you load I think it's the TuneIn radio app on your phone, you find all sorts of different radio stations that you just can't get on your wireless or in your car. So I think
Yeah.
it's worth looking into for people who want to find new music as well.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, let's go on to your next one then. You mentioned them already, Oasis, song from the third album. Why
Yeah.
this particular one?
I mean, BA now gets some right stick. I mean, Noel slated it to high heavens. He said he wished he never made it. He wished Master Plan was the album for number 3. But I just don't. I mean, I get why people don't like it because obviously they were on a lot of coke and they were drawing out songs. I mean, all around the world, I think still holds the record for the longest song that is number 1, which is like 9 minutes.
All right.
But like, so when you got songs like "Stand by Me" and "Don't Go Away," all around the world, which
That's
are
good, yeah. Like that GMX gig is probably one of my favorites to watch
yeah,
on
when
YouTube.
he did "Don't Go Away" on that gig, I mean, when he was sweating, you could tell he was obviously on like loads of coke or whatever. And that is the closest I've ever heard him sing as as close to the album as I've ever heard Liam sing on a live performance. And just I think I know is just that song that just doesn't get any love, but it's such a good song. It's such like a happy song as well. I mean,
You heard
it's
Laurie Wright? He's like a kid's that he's like in a band at the minute, but he got quite famous for his busking and he used to bust this song.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it sounds quite good, but yeah, that's where I recognize
I'll,
it from.
oh, you're right. Okay. Something's telling me I've heard that name before, but
You will have done, yeah. He's all over the shop at the minute.
yeah. But yeah, it's just that song where it's just like a hidden gem on the album because I say Oasis fans, you do get like a big portion of them who are like heavily on the singles, but people love like just the album tracks. I think that's just one that always gets missed. Like
Mm.
My Big Mouth's like such a big song because of Nebworth, and like Magic Pie is probably another one that doesn't get much love. The Be Here Now title track was on a Harry Enfield sketch that he did. Um, so that I hope I think it was probably like that little gem, but it's just such a good song. I just don't get why people just don't mention it enough, and because of that, it's like one of those ones. It's like my little song in a way.
Yeah, well, it's always good when these songs that get like saturated, like get
Yeah,
hammered on radio, or whatever. Yeah. That's why I think a lot of people quite like the Strokes' second album because
yeah,
it got kind of panned in a similar way. Actually, it got kind of panned in the press, and then therefore you only hear like a couple of singles from it on the radio.
yeah, yeah.
So yeah,
It's good. Like to have those sort of songs that don't get absolute hammer, but sometimes they can be really shit. They're not that good. So for it to pay off, I think it's that's one of the reasons why it's so special because it's such a good song and it just doesn't get mentioned. So that's quite personal to me.
yeah. Yeah. Okay, well here it is. Here's Oasis with "I Hope I Think I Know." Then the last two bands you said are American, and yeah, like you mentioned, Kerrang. Is it more like Kerrang leaning songs? Would you say, or bands?
I mean, it's more like rock sound to be honest. Krang was like mainly for like Slipknot and Korn and Linkin Park and stuff like that. Rock sounds more like what I've mentioned on these two. It's They were like your pop punk and sort of like your hardcore sort of scene, which are like obviously subgenres from like your main sort of heavy music. Um, but because of growing up through music, like being a teenager, you find these different types of genres. So your typical bands like Blink 182 and Green Day and Bowling for Soup and stuff like that. You know, there's these new bands coming through, and you always, let's say, if you wanted to find new music, these were like bands that were just coming up at the time, and they've then gone on to release like 4 or 5 albums, and but that scene is so secluded in a way of you don't get heavily publicized um, in the media. It's very rare one of these bands are going to jump on Glastonbury. Let alone, I mean, you got Download and Reading and Leeds. These might play once every 5 years on those types of festivals, but in their own scene, I mean, it can be quite chaotic in a live performance. And these do have like dedicated fan bases as well.
Yeah, yeah, interesting. Well, we could play these back to back then. So first of all, we can have Transit with Long Lost Friends, and then that'll have been Between You and Me with Pleased to Meet You. Well, cheers for your time, mate, and cheers for getting in touch.
No, it's not a problem. Thank you for having me.
What's your upcoming? Well, what did you make of Glastonbury first of all? Is that something? Have you been before?
I've never been to Glastonbury. The big festivals, I've only been to like Leeds and Download. I mean, I did try to get for tickets. I've done for years. Um, but I listened to a few. Well, I've watched a few performances. Let's say Fontaine, Soft Play, Idols. I did watch a bit of Coldplay because I love the second Coldplay album. I think it's brilliant. Um, but yeah, it's always had some flack. Um, and rightly so in a way, because it's like the BBC. They try to play it safe and stuff like that. Funnily enough, there were actually a band on there called Mannequin Pussy.
Yeah, I
Um,
saw that name come up at one point.
Yeah, they actually played Glastonbury on Friday or Saturday, and I seen them yesterday at
All right.
a festival I went to in Manchester. Um, and they like give Glastonbury a bit of the stick because they
Saying what?
just because of the name, they didn't want to use the name.
Right.
So they just referred it as like Mannequin P, and the band was like, "No, we're not happy with that because obviously that's not the name," sort of thing. Um, but yeah, it's good to watch though because at the end of the day, you don't get to see music all the time on the telly,
Yeah.
and even when you put BBC Two on or BBC One, you only get to see like the big stuff. So like if Arctic Monkeys headline or Foo Fighters, you always will get them. And then you'll get maybe like one or two of the bands that played in the afternoon, but they have to be like a big name. Whereas the iPlayer, you'll find like so much different stuff. Plus, they have the introducing stage on, which is quite good.
Hmm.
And again, that is another good point to find new music. Um, but sometimes the introducing stage at Glastonbury, they'll say, "Oh, like this is this new band." It's like, well, this band have played like the third stage at Leeds Festival.
All
So
right.
I think they play down some of the smaller artists, which again is a bit annoying. But at the same time, these artists are grateful to be playing the biggest festival in the world.
Yeah.
So
I was trying to find that on iPlayer yesterday, introduced to stage because there's a guy from Hull who's on it. Um, Cheerdo, but I couldn't find it for some reason.
have you looked on the BBC Music YouTube channel?
Yeah, it'd be on there
Yeah.
now. Uh, yeah, probably be on there now. I just wanted to watch it live, but I couldn't do it for some reason.
Oh, okay, yeah. They might not do the introducing one live. They might just do like record it and
Yeah,
put it
yeah.
on. But
I'll have a
yeah,
look for that.
it's they do have one. They do have the introducing on YouTube. I know that, but sometimes they're just like one or two songs.
Right, okay, yeah, yeah. Okay then, mate. Like, where can people catch up with your stuff? Like on Instagram, obviously, it's Taped Magazine, Taped Mag UK.
Yeah,
Is that the place to go?
um, yeah. So the easiest way to do it is on the bio. The bio will have like different links for the different socials like Facebook, Twitter, and the website itself. So just a case of if people are interested in finding out tour announcements, festival news, when new music's coming out. Obviously, we do live reviews, interviews. So people that like just love music as a whole, it's biased, but it's a good hub to find everything. And yeah, it's just I say because a lot of things are not printed anymore. Because we're not in that world anymore anyway. Not many people buy newspapers or like magazines. It's all like online, and it's just more catered towards the younger people, I suppose, or like modern society. And but it's so much easier, like on Instagram, just flicking through and you find stuff. It's just the algorithms a bit all over the shop at the moment, which is quite frustrating because people are finding stuff out that's 5 days old now. Um, but like that's why the website is quite good, and they can sign up to the mailing list through the website. So whenever a new article gets published, they'll get an email um, to say that this has been announced. So if they out like their algorithm stuff's not brilliant on socials, then that's probably the best way to keep up to date through the website. Um, but then hopefully it does interest people who would be looking to go down that route. Because at the end of the day, this whole thing that I do is just me. I don't do it with anybody else. Um, we're quite lucky with the photographers that we get to work with, though. A big credit to them because as much as we're doing live reviews and we're writing nice things about bands, the photos do help make it look pretty, and it gives these photographers an outlet to show off their work just as much as they can on their social. So, we've worked with quite a few of them, and the good thing about it is as well we're able to give those photographers the opportunity to go to these shows because when we apply for like to do a review, they were like, "Oh, do you want a +1 or do you want a photo pass and things like that?" So if I'm going to a show in Leeds, I can reach out to a photographer based in Leeds. Go, "Oh, well, I've got this show coming up. If you want to shoot it, there's a photo pass available." And if they take it, they take it, and they've got that sort of chance to be able to shoot one of the biggest stars in the world, or like I say, the next best thing. For example, we had one photographer from Grimsby. She went to go see Taylor Swift in Liverpool, just as a punter, and she was stopping the night before, and I got her a photo pass to go to Liam Gallagher
Right,
at the co-op.
decent.
So just because you're in the area, and that just worked out. But then, like, she'd normally go to like Lincoln, and there's Manchester's obviously like massive, and Nottingham and Leeds and Sheffield, and these photographers will reach out to venues and just not get a response, so they're like missing out in a way. So it's like I like to think that I do help out the photographers in a way to get that extra experience, because again, based on like what I mentioned with building that relationship with press contacts, is they'll shoot a show for a particular artist in the academy, and then they're going to be able to get the opportunity to go and shoot a show in an arena or a stadium or an outdoor place or even festivals. And that's just purely because of building that relationship. So I'd like to use the same sort of photographers as well, because like we've built that relationship up, and you can trust them. And if the turnaround time's really good, because at the end of the day, with a review, you want to keep it like up to date as, or keep like, so if like a gig's on a Monday, you ideally want to get it out there like Wednesday at the very latest.
Yeah.
And if the photographers have got the same turnaround time, that's fine. That helps out at the end of the day. And but credit to them, because the editing and the time they have to put in. I mean, the one we went to a gig at Lincoln to watch Paul Weller, and one of them took something like 2,000 photos. But then
Jesus.
they'll only use like 30 of them for like the socials.
Yeah.
And it's like the hours that they spend in editing and picking out these photos, and they have their own sort of targets and demands that they're happy with on these photos, and the fact that they're willing to let me use them for like the reviews is a big credit to them. And I say building that relationship with them is quite special, because you're both in it together at the end of the day. And plus, photographers who will shoot shows for me, one will do it in Leeds, one will do it in Manchester, they will connect as well. So they'll follow each other on Instagram, and they'll probably talk. And then all of a sudden, they're at a show together, maybe for different publications, maybe the same, but they're building that relationship. And the photographing culture, or the world, is so, it's like quite together, and it just seems like they've all like joined in. Like 5 or 6 photographers that I've worked with are all like mates now. I think they did one gig in Lincoln the other day. I think 4 of them were together for like the first time they've met, but they've spoke to each other for like a year. So that's quite good. But like I say, if anyone is interested in working with us, whether it's something for work experience or they're looking to get into that world, more than happy for them to reach out, because at the end of the day, it's bloody tiring what I do. I could do with a bit of help, to be honest. I'd like to sort of pass that on, that knowledge on that I think I've got, to get people on board and give them a platform to use. Because as much as I was quite lucky in creating a platform, and I've done reasonably well off it, it's not always going to be the same for everybody else. So I'd like to sort of give that opportunity to somebody else to join in, and they've got something built up ready, and they can just run with it and in their own way. Because as much as I covered Sheffield and Nottingham and Manchester and Leeds, you know, there's different parts of the country that I can't always go to, like Newcastle, London, Bristol, Cardiff, Glasgow. You know, the people out there who can then broaden the brand out there as well, and then photographers in that area can work with us and so on. And then hopefully in the next year or two, we're going to be on a much larger scale. We're going to get more opportunities. Bigger festivals are going to start coming for us. And at the end of the day, it's just building that community. I think that's one thing that music has always done. Bands, tour managers, people that work on the merchandise, it, it's a big community, you know, because they're working with different people all the time. But it's because of references and things like that. You know, you put in a good word for people. Oh, I've worked with this person. I've worked with this person. And they all come together, and I think that's one thing that music is really good at, is just bringing people together.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's a great finishing point, mate.
Thank you.
Nice one.